De Hoop, English, The Hope, is a smock mill in Holwerd, Friesland, Netherlands which was built in the 1730s and is working for trade. The mill is listed as a Rijksmonument, number 38,709. History. The earliest record of a windmill in Holland is c. 1399, when the windrecht, English, right to wind, was mentioned on page 292 of the Zoenbrief, an accord between Count Albrecht van Beieren and the Frisian people. An old and established town near Dokkum is mentioned in the document, and windmills are also mentioned. It is generally accepted that the town referred to is Holwerd. In 1511, a mill yard is mentioned at Holwerd. In 1515, the town was burnt in a battle between the Duke of Gelre and the Duke of Saxon. Amongst the buildings burnt was a dye mill. In 1677, a mill on the town wall was sold for F2900, a high price for the time. The earliest record of a mill named De Hoop is that it was standing in 1711, when it was bought for F2540 by Jan and Jeppy Harmans from Anti-Lamitz, widow of Miller Ebel VI. In 1713, Jan Harmanis sold his share of the mill to Nitters Siemens for F1170. In 1715, Siemanis sold his share of the mill to Heert Pitters for F4000. In 1721, Jeppy Harmans took over his father's mill at Leeuwessens and sold his share in De Hoop to Heert Pitters. Pitters was followed by Harks VI, who was miller in 1728. On the 7th of January 1729, the mill was sold by auction to Jan Sieverts, who owned a barley mill in the town. He worked the mill until his death in 1732, following which his widow took over the running of the mill. In 1748, the mill was only working at two-thirds capacity as a pair of ryestones had been removed from the mill, the tax on the mill then being assessed at F40 instead of F60. In 1750, the tax reverted to F60, indicating that the barley stones had been replaced. In 1754, Sievert's son Sigurd Jan Sievert came of age and took the mill. In 1764, the mill was bought by Eds Lewers. He worked the mill until his death in 1784, after which his widow Hinkie Johannes took the mill. Lutje Jans van der Meulen was the next miller. He bought the mill in 1811 for F9500. At this time, an annual ground rent of F4 was payable. He died on 3 November 1826, aged 57. The mill was then worked by his widow Niska Kadijik until it was sold by auction at Dezawan, Holwerd on 12 May 1839. At this time, the mill had 4 pairs of millstones. The stage was 4.50 meters, 14 feet 9 in, above ground level, and the sails had span of 16.50 meters, 54 feet 2 in. The mill was bought for F9506 by Gerben Willems Hoekstra of Zwaagwesteinde. He was then 31 years old. In 1849, De Hoop was demolished and a new mill built in its place. On 26 March 1873, Hoekstra's wife Fokelina Cornelis Postuma died, followed on 29 October 1873 by their daughter Thrijntje. In this year, De Hoop was modernized, and a cast-iron wind shaft was fitted. Hoekstra died on 5 July 1892 aged 84. His estate was worth F32567.92. which was then a large sum of money for a miller to leave. The mill was bought at auction for F4380 by Hoekstra's son Ranger Bins Hoekstra. He ran the mill until he retired in 1909. The mill was sold for F4700 to his son Henricus Hoekstra. Photographs taken C1930 show that the mill was then equipped with 1 pair of common sails and 1 pair of patent sails. He ran De Hoop until he retired in 1948 aged 70. His son Henricus then took the mill and ran it with his brother-in-law Pierre Fadima. The mill was sold to L.O. Hidema & Co. in 1954. The internal machinery was dismantled and the mill relegated to use as a store. In December 1956, the Gemeente West Dong Erediel entered into negotiations with Hidema with the aim of purchasing the mill for preservation. Hidema asks at least F10,000 for the mill. In 1962, further negotiations were made, and millwright Jellimer of Berdard was asked to assess the costs of restoration of the mill building only. Plans were made for a foundation to care for the mill once it had been purchased by the Gemeente. On 25 June 1963, the mill was bought by the Gemeente West Dong Erediel for F5,000. Restorations were undertaken in 1967 and 1971, concentrating on the exterior of the mill at a cost of F70,000. In 1980, the internal machinery was restored and the mill was returned to working order at a cost of F27,000. The mill was officially opened on 30 June 1982. New sails were fitted in 1994 by millwright Jellimer of Berdard. In the year, ownership of the hoop was transferred to Stichting Monumentum Behoud Dong Erediel. The mill was rethatched in 2009. Description: De hoop is what the Dutch describe as a stelling molen. It is a two-story smock mill on a three-story base. The stage is at second floor level, 6.10 meters, 20 feet 0 in, above ground level. The smock and cap are thatched. The mill is winded by tailpole and winch. The sails are common sails. They have a span of 23.65 meters. 77 feet 7 in. The sails are carried on a cast-iron wind shaft, which was cast in 1873 by L. Enthoven & Co. S. Gravenhager. The wind shaft also carries the brake wheel, which has 62 cogs. This drives the Waller, 32 cogs, at the top of the upright shaft. At the bottom of the upright shaft, the great spur wheel, which has 91 cogs. The great spur wheel drives a pair of 1.40 meters, 4 feet 7 in, diameter Cullen millstones via a lantern pinion stone nut which has 24 staves. There are also two pairs of millstones used for producing pearl barley. Each is driven via a lantern pinion stone nut which has 24 staves. The millstones are 1.66 meters, 5 feet 5 in, and 1.82 meters, 6 feet 0 in, diameter. Millers. Ebel 6. Anti-Lamets -1711. Jan Harmanis 1711-18. Jeppy Harmanis 1711-21. Nutters Simon 1713-15. Heert Pitters 1715-28. Hark 6 1728-29. Jan Sieverts 1729-32. Mrs. Sieverts 1732-54. Sigever Jan Sieverts 1754-64. Idslu was 1764-84. Hinky Johannes 1784-1811. Lucia Jans van der Meulen 1811-26. Nieske Kadijik 1826-39. Gerben Willems Hoekstra 1839-92. Rein Hoekstra 1892-1909. Henricus Hoekstra Senior 1909-48. Henricus Hoekstra Junior 1948-54. Pierre Fedima 1948-54. For above. Public access. The hoop is open to the public on Saturday mornings, and at other times by appointment. Website of Koren en Pelmolen de Hoop.